With the summer sizzle starting to fizzle, cooler heads are looking to lock in a wellness routine fit for the fall and beyond. Lucky for you, Ritual's high standards don't drop with the temperature. Fully committed to traceable science and sourcing, Ritual is shaking up the supplement industry with high-quality ingredients and scientifically developed formulas. With them, you know what you're taking, where it comes from, and why it's important. They've got every base covered, from their clinically backed women's 18-plus multivitamin to groundbreaking options like stress relief and sleep melatonin, which both use first-of-its-kind bioseries technology designed to optimize formula delivery. And right now, for a limited time, get up to 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast.
Previously on the Pavement Top 50.
This week, we're going deep on Bach's Elder. How are you feeling about song number 19, Kyra from the COWI?
I fucking love Bach's Elder so much. It's a great song. It's one of the earlier Pavement songs. I think it's very early Pavement song, which is cool. And it's one that really holds up, I think, too.
Hey, this is Westy from the rock and roll band Pavement, and you're listening to The Countdown.
Hey, it's JD here, back for another episode of our Top 50 Countdown for Seminole indie rock band Pavement. Week over week, we're going to count down the 50 essential Pavement tracks that you selected with your very own top 20 ballads. I then tabulated the results using an abacus, a wet towel, and some scrawny kid from 10th grade gym class. How will your favorite songs fare in the rankings? You'll need to tune in to find out. So there's that. This week, I'm joined by Pavement superfan Vish from Kreative Kontrol with Vish Khanna. Dude, thanks for taking some time to do this. It means a lot. How the hell are you doing?
I'm well, JD. Thanks for having me on your show. How are you doing?
I'm great today. It's a little overcast here, but it's about 5 degrees, so I'm going to go for a walk later, and those are good times for me.
Very nice. That's good. Going outside. Can't beat it.
No, you can't at all. Well, let's not beat around the bush, speaking of beat it, and get right into your Pavement Origins story. Talk to me about that, Vish.
Well, I was trying to, I knew I was coming on your show, so I figured I should try to ponder this, and I was trying to remember. I think I first came upon the band when I read about them in Spin magazine, I think before Crooked Rain came out, and I don't know what it was about that piece. This is right around the time I started getting to go to record stores. What would I have been then? I would have been 15, 16. Some of us were driving, so we could leave Cambridge, Ontario, where I'm from, and we could go to Kitchener and Waterloo and Toronto. They had the cooler record stores. Those were like college, university towns. So then we started going to record stores, and then you start talking to the record store people, and they tell you what they like, and you respect them because they're your surrogate parents. So somebody somewhere along the line told me about Pavement. I'm pretty sure it was the Spin magazine article that I started devouring more and more music journalism, and I think it was that. So I remember owning Slanted and Enchanted, and also the record store had the Trigger Cut single.
Oh, wow.
So I think I bought both things, and I'm fairly certain I bought both things. And I will say that first single got me completely obsessed with their singles, because I think they're one of the greatest treasure troves of any band I can think of. I know you've probably talked about this with others, but I really value Pavement B-Sides. I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I was surprised that Harness Your Hopes went kind of bonkers recently, but I'm not surprised. Pavement B-Sides, I know some of them better than I know the album songs, to be honest with you. I just became so obsessed with how great, the quality of their B-Sides really spoke to me. And then, that's one of the, and then I feel like that was a gateway into what is Silver Jews? Why is this, what is Silver Jews in the Pavement section? What is it? Oh, it's a project. Oh, there's Bob and Steve on the back of the album cover. So they're in this, I guess. And so, the B-side alternate Pavement universe, if you will, really spoke to me and still does. I find myself kind of, mumbling song lyrics and tunes and melodies from, humming them from all the B-sides. So, Yeah, I would position myself that way as someone who I get a little obsessive. So it wasn't just the albums. It was like I want to get all the singles. So I owned every single mostly on compact disc when I was coming up of age, and now I've got them all on. Actually, you know what I ordered? I ordered that thing.
You ordered the box set?
I ordered the singles box set. I have a bunch of them, but I was like, what the hell? I'm going to do it. So
the book looks good.
yeah, everything about it looks good. I love Pavement. So
Yeah.
I just thought I would get that too. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's where I discovered them. And then, of course, they blew up. You know, they were one of those bands that all your cool heroes were talking about before you even heard them, you know? So you'd read a interview with someone you liked and they'd mention Pavements. You're like, what is this Pavement? So really of a time and place for me, word of mouth, and then actually digging in. I have still a sense memory of playing Slanted and Enchanted and hearing Summer Babe, and you're just like, what the hell? So yeah, I'd say that's got to be it. I think that's it.
And you got to be there for the release of Watery then. Did you, as somebody who was like sort of EP and single obsessed, did you pick that up when it came out?
I did pick it up. I don't know if I got it right when it came out. I can't say that for sure because I feel like I still came to them a little bit later. Because I'm sure that article was 93. Like, I don't think it was about Slanted. It was just mentioned. So, but I got it. Yeah. And as you may have heard me talk about, it's it's like my favorite thing, really, in some ways. And yeah, I miss Gary Young. I never got to meet or talk to Gary Young, but
oh damn.
But yeah, the drumming as a drummer as well, as a budding drummer, like hearing Gary's playing, that had a huge influence on me too. So yeah, that era.
Put your finger on what it is, isn't it? What it is about Gary's drumming. I love Westy. I love him. He's a great guy and he's a great drummer, but there's something about Gary.
There's something about the looseness and the showmanship of people like Gary Young. I would say here in Canada, we have Mark Gadet, who was in Eric's Trip, and his drumming too. Like, it's punk rock, but it's a bit more technical, and it's precise, but it's loose, and it just has it. He's making an instrument. You know, they have their own voice, I suppose, as drummers.
Right.
They have their own. Like, you hear it, and you're like, oh, that's either Gary. Or, as I mentioned, Mark, for two examples, or it's someone copying them. You know, it's someone kind of ripping them off. So I certainly was of this learning how to play the instrument and getting into some really amazing drummers at the time, just because I didn't take drum lessons. I would just listen to things or go see bands. And
wow,
certain people and their drumming had a huge impact on me. And certainly early Pavement drumming.
Yeah.
I think it's an underrated facet of that band.
Did you get a chance to see the Gary doc?
No, you know what? I haven't seen that doc. That's a good call. I've been rather swamped of late, and I need to do that. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's really it's pretty fabulous.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're right. I don't know. I'm at a thing where I got to do so much and I process so much information and music and I can't keep up with everything. So yeah, I saw it come through and I was like, yeah, I will watch that eventually. And then before you know it, I don't think I'm alone in this where there's just so much stuff to consume. But yeah, good call. Good call. I'll try to track it down on, I don't know if it's on a service or whatever, a streaming service, but I'll try and watch that.
Yeah, I think it is because I don't know how I would have seen it. I forget.
Yeah.
When did you finally get to see them live, or did you see them live in the original sort of run?
I saw them for the first time in Barrie, Ontario at Lollapalooza in 1995. This was
wow.
Lollapalooza curated by Sonic Youth. So also on the bill was supposed to be Sinead, it was supposed to be Sinead O'Connor. But I think I attended the first show that she couldn't play because she was pregnant. And so Elastica filled in. But the day was like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. First time I got to see the Jesus Lizard. Pavement obviously played during the day. Hole played.
Beck was on the lineup too, wasn't he?
Yeah, I saw Beck play two sets. One on the main stage. This was just ahead of Odelay coming out. And he also did a side stage performance where I actually spoke to him. He came down and signed autographs. So he signed, I don't know where it is, but he signed my Lollapalooza ticket stub.
Oh,
and I asked him, cool. I think I I tripped him out a little because I'd heard that he was going to be collaborating with a Toronto musician. And when I mentioned it, he was like, oh, yeah, we have been talking about that. Like I kind of nardwared him. And I didn't mean it. It was just a rumor. I just said it. And he was like, oh, yeah, we were talking about that. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, and the Far Side played and Moby played and all sorts of amazing.
Pretty eclectic.
Yeah, it was really. Cypress Hill was one of the headliners. Bob Nastanovich, when he was on my show, I did a little documentary about Brighton the Corners, and he talked extensively about their experiences with some of the artists and their experiences playing Lollapalooza, and Bob's amazing innovation of suggesting that instead of getting a bus, they would each get minivans. He got a great deal in some rental minivans. And that way they could play and then just drive ahead to the show and not worry about the gear and all that stuff. And they could kind of travel at their leisure. And yeah, anyway, so Lollapalooza 95 is the first show. Then I saw them at the Phoenix in Toronto for the
Really?
Brighten the Corners tour. And then I saw them play, you remember the Cool House and the...
Absolutely.
Sorry, for those wondering, in Toronto, there was a venue and it had two rooms. And one, it was called the Warehouse, and then beside it was something called the Government, a smaller room. And then the Warehouse became, it was like the RPM Warehouse or something like that is what it was called. And then it changed names. It was the Cool House, but I think the Government was still there. So for Terror Twilight, as I recall, Pavement played the Government, so the smaller room on that tour. So I saw them there, and then I saw them on Toronto Island on the first reunion tour with the Broken Social Scene.
That would be a great show.
I think that's the last time I was invited, or I was supposed to go see them in Austin, Texas, and Bob hooked me up, and I think I might have even been able to attend the Austin City Limits taping, but unfortunately I couldn't make it at the last minute, so that was a bit of a bummer, but I regret it. But, you know, it was weird, still weird pandemic times then, and I think there was also other stuff going on, so I didn't get to see them on this current reunion, but it still seems to be going as we're speaking, so who knows?
Yes.
Maybe I can see them somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are recording this in early April, so
yeah,
we're not, that's not a scoop, people. Just in case you're listening to this in October and you're like, oh, Christ, they're coming back. They very may well be. I just edited the Bob episode, and, you know, I sort of teased him because he's like, we're done after South America. And I was like, come on, come on.
Yeah.
I'll believe you're done when you're done.
Yeah.
But enough about me. Back to you.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the Lola performance. Like, so you got to see them in Government isn't intimate, but it's nice. And then you got to see them in Lollapalooza in front of a big crowd. What do you think of the festival version of Pavement?
Well, I mean, obviously it's well documented that they didn't have the best time on that tour on some level. In Slow Century, there's obviously the fracas, where people are throwing mud at them and all sorts of, a rock at Steven, actually. You know, I was a kid. I mean, that was sensory overload. I was just going to, how old was I? So 95, I was, had I even turned, yeah, I was not even, what was I, 16 or something like that? I don't know. I was not an old, I was young.
You were 76?
No, wait a minute. Yeah, I was 17. So I was born, I was born in 77. So I hadn't yet turned 18. So I was 17. And yeah, it was just, that was a bonkers year, to be honest with you. That summer, I went to everything. I went to so many festivals. For all my belly aching about my parents not letting me do stuff, they let me do a lot of stuff that summer. So yeah, I think I was just overwhelmed by how many people were surrounding me, and I got up as close as I could for Pavement. And we got up really close. Like, seeing the Jesus Lizard was a bit, I loved the Jesus Lizard already at that point. I just loved them. And to see them was like they were larger than life. And, you know, yeah, for those who've never seen them or footage of them at that point, Yao would come into the crowd, you know. He would leap off the stage and and crowd surf and all that kind of stuff and sing while he was doing it. So it was very immersive. And then Pavement, relatively the opposite. They're on stage and the songs are great and they played well, as I recall. But on some level, I remember just making a point of getting up as close as possible and trying not to, at the same time, be conscious of not bothering people as you move your way up, because I was kind of annoyed at everyone running around and pushing their way forward and all that stuff. So
never made sense to me.
Yeah, just that's my main memory of just like trying to. I was probably for the Jesus Lizard and Pavement. That was the closest I was probably to the stage, and then otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have a real sense memory of the Phoenix show for Brighten the Corners for a few reasons, and I've talked about them with Bob at least. Bob did an interpolation of a Kool Keith song. Which I was like, oh, I didn't know people knew about Kool Keith. Like I had only started listening to Kool Keith at that time, and he did.
I have no clue.
Kool Keith is a really innovative underground hip hop superstar. He was in a group called Ultramagnetic MCs, and then he went solo as Dr. Octagon, and as Kool Keith, he has all these pseudonyms. And to be precise. Black Elvis. Like he had all these cool names. So to be precise, I believe, as I recall, Bob was quoting the Dr. Octagon project, and he just did it in the middle of a song. And then also the other thing that occurred to me, and it's sort of relevant to the song today, is during Stereo, when Stephen Malcolm is saying the lines about Geddy Lee and his voice being so high, he shot his voice up super high, like a comically high effect. How did it get so, like, just pitch perfect, super high? I think it's documented in a Much Music interview that they did that day or whatever, like while they were in town. And then obviously afterwards they interspersed some live footage of the band playing. And Steven singing, on this song that we're here to talk about today is so remarkable to me. And I remember that I had this sense memory of him singing that and thinking it was very amusing. I thought it was more amusing than impressive at the time. Right. But over time, as I have come to value Stephen's singing voice and his range and his ability and just instincts as a singer, I view it as more impressive now than... I still think it's funny because I think he's got a comical element to his choices. And certainly live, anything can happen. But they were just, I think that Brighten the Corner show it's certainly one of the best shows I've ever seen. So I would also say it's one of the, if not it was the best time I saw Pavement, probably.
That's a great venue. I think the Phoenix is phenomenal.
I don't want to discount the reunion show I saw because I think with age and time away from each other, they actually have, I don't know how many reunion shows you've seen. But often I find that these bands that, particularly for us, the bands that were around in the 90s, when they come back, they're better.
Yeah.
Like they seem more at ease with themselves as people and as players. And so the absence, I don't know what it is. They just seem more relaxed. And I think when you're more relaxed, you play better. I think
20-something angst, we'll call it.
I think if you're not relaxed with each other, you don't play as well. You're just a little uptight. And then as you sort of resign yourself to, not resign yourself, but as you sort of you let go of things. I guess that is a way of putting it. You kind of let go of any little grudges and you don't have that angst, whether it's your own or whether it's about yourself or whether it's interpersonal. And I think you just play better. So when I saw the Jesus Lizard on their reunion tour, having seen them several times in the 90s, I just was like, I think they're better. They might be better. And Pavement, as I recall from the Toronto Island show, it felt good. They played so well, together. But up until that point, I would say that Brighten the Corners show I saw at the Phoenix in Toronto was just like, they were just on fire. It was brilliant. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into song number 18, I gotta ask you, as one of the only people I know that has interviewed Mark Ibold, the reclusive Mark Ibold, how the hell did you do it? And that interview, by the way, was phenomenal. It was great.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I have to draw back on my memory for this. So the occasion was the Terror Twilight reissue from a year or two or a couple of years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah, who knows?
And like you, I think my social entry point into this band is Bob Nastanovich.
Absolutely.
So Bob is, I've gone on record saying this to others. I think I said it maybe to him during our Terror Twilight discussion. Bob is the greatest podcast guest of all time.
You don't even have to ask him a question and he starts.
He's so funny and he's so frank and he says things that I'm surprised he might say.
Absolutely.
I love him so much, and he's been very kind to me over the years as well. I first spoke with Bob around the time of that reunion tour. And so what was that, 2009? 10? Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking the Jesus Lizard was 2009. So yeah, I spoke to Bob around that period, and then we've maintained contact basically ever since. That was for my college radio show, actually. And then, so
that was here in Toronto.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, when I was living in Ontario at the time, right. I had a college radio show and would play some Pavement, and Bob was a guest on that show. And I probably wrote a magazine article for Exclaim magazine as well. That's what I do and used to do more often. Anyway, yeah, so the Terror Twilight thing came about. By this point, Bob and I he'd been on my podcast a few times. And so I'm sure I went through the proper channels to try to figure out the interview and get the music and all the assets and all that. But Bob, I was like, Bob, can we get everyone? Let's just get everyone on the show. Probably like you have done. Like you just, you're trying to do this now. You're trying to talk to as many of the members as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
And in the loop, so yeah, I'm emailing Steven, and I think I texted Steven because he wasn't responding. So we sort of landed on Westy and Bob and Mark, and then Jesper, who was involved in the reissue for Matador, was going to take part. And then at the day of, Mark couldn't do it. He was in transit. He couldn't join us for the group call. But Bob connected us over email, I believe, and maybe text. I don't recall. And so Mark felt, I think, kind of badly that he couldn't do it, that he said he would do it and that he didn't end up doing it. And I assume Bob vouched for me, and so that was kind of it. Really, we corresponded. He felt badly that he couldn't make the group call. We arranged a time. We had a good talk. You heard it. And then I believe I put it out right after I had put out that group call. So back to back, it was like Pavement Week on my show for Terror Twilight. Yeah. So I can't recall, because I do so many of these, exactly what Mark and I talked about. I think we talked about some of his radio listening habits.
You did, yes. He still uses a radio.
Yeah, you might actually have a better perspective on it than me at this point, because I just don't remember. You know how JD, I'm sure you're familiar with this. You do so many of them, interviews, episodes. Right. You're just like, oh yeah, I forgot I had so-and-so on the show. What the hell did we talk about again? That happens to me all the time.
When I edit, I'll be listening and I'll be like, it sounds like a conversation between somebody who doubles my voice and my guest, because I don't recall virtually anything about what we talked about.
Well, I remember realizing it was a real kind of rarity for Mark to do such a thing. I think at the time, a Sonic Youth archival compilation had just come out that Mark appeared on. So there was just a fair amount to talk about. It was a lot of memory jogging, unfortunately, for him, trying to remember the Terror Twilight sessions, trying to remember playing with Sonic Youth, all about a decade out from doing it, right. Or more, or a decade or more, 20 years. He was very lovely and forthcoming, and I really appreciate it. I think I've spoken to everyone but Gary, I suppose. I never got a chance to speak to Gary Young, but in terms of I guess, whatever, core or original lineup. I've talked to all of them at some points in my life, and I hope to talk to them again. I do adore them. So it's, yeah.
You can tell. You can really tell. And we should have said this off the top, but Vish is Kreative Kontrol is a podcast. If you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it. If you like music, if you're maybe a bit obsessive about music, Vish does a really phenomenal job of conversations with famous people. For people who listen to this show, you might want to start with some of the David Berman stuff because it's pretty spectacular. And then work your way through the Pavement. But it's all good from the stuff that I've heard, for sure.
Well, thank you for the kind words and for saying so. Yeah, I do love doing the show, and it has it's granted me access and insight to and from people I really truly admire and adore, and I marvel at what I've been able to accomplish and get away with. It is. I don't really understand it, but certain people like Bob and others have a fondness for me and return to the show and all that sort of stuff. And it means a lot. Thanks for saying that.
No, I should have said it off the top. But what do you say we talk about the song this week, song number 18?
Let's do it.
Okay, we'll be back right after this.
As the summer sizzle fades, it's time to establish a wellness routine that's here to stay. Ritual is shaking up the supplement industry with their focus on traceable science and high-quality ingredients. They've got every base covered, from their clinically backed women's 18-plus multivitamin to their stress relief and sleep melatonin, both using first-of-its-kind BioSeries technology designed to optimize formula delivery. For a limited time, get up to 40% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast.
Hey, this is Bob Nastanovich from Pavement. Thanks for listening, and now on with a countdown.
18.
Rotten device, I'll say it twice. I'm too much comforted here. 'Cause too much will leave you everywhere eyes, nowhere to die, no place to sharp your sharpened heel.
So today we're talking all about song number 18 from the masterpiece Wowie Zowie. It's the absolutely gorgeous Father to a Sister of Thought. Vish, what are your initial thoughts about this song?
Well, I was so happy that we landed on this as a song to talk about because I do love Wowie Zowie. I have a sense memory of picking it up when it came out. I think the day it came out. Obviously a sort of a strange record, an eclectic record. And this is interesting. It's a really fascinating song because in some ways it's super accessible, musically.
Yes.
It leans with the pedal steel and some of the other moves. It leans towards kind of country music. I will say, as I was pondering it, I know we are in a vacuum here of people who love Pavement,
Right.
and who love Stephen Malcolmus, but as I was listening to this in preparation for our chat, I'm like, Malcolmus is like an underrated everything. Like I know I really feel that way, and in particular, I think he's a remarkable singer. And and this song I think exemplifies that. He makes super fascinating choices with his phrasing, I think, and just the notes he's going to go for on words. Like, I don't know how to put it. I'm not super adept at maybe talking about music on that level, but it's just very dynamic the way he shoots his voice up and sort of sings one line. And I think aside from missing like his sort of grittiness, like he also is a great screamer, great yeller.
He really is.
Like Paul McCartney level dynamic range, I think, with Stephen when he wants to. Like he can sing. I don't know if that resonates with you. Like McCartney to me can sing anything. He can sing a ballad. He can sing like a Little Richard rocker and sound like a punk. Like it's bonkers, that guy's vocal range. And I think Malcolmus is totally in that vein. So he's not yelling on this song, but I think if anyone is interested, like this song is a perfect showcase for what he can do as a vocalist. And before I go much further, JD, does that resonate with you?
It certainly does. I when I think of this song, the word I used right off the bat was gorgeous. And it's gorgeous in a number of ways. The vocal, the melody, like his ability as a songwriter. I don't know how much of the arranging he did or if it was Easley who said, let's use this pedal steel. But nevertheless, it just works so well with the timbre of his voice. And it all comes together in a really lovely ball.
Yeah, and I think the little contrarian aspect to, or I don't know how to describe it, this little element of it's a little contrary. I think, I don't think I'm saying anything untoward, where there's an element of self-sabotage sometimes in the Pavement realm where everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden, let's pull the plug and do something wild and nuts or crazy, you know what I mean? And then, so this song has this really jaunty country vibe, and then it ends with this like minimalist noise rock stomp.
Jam. Yeah.
Like it suddenly becomes a little more punk after the sort of, so it's kind of this, and it's all part of this. It's that end. It has nothing to do with anything else we've heard.
No,
instrumentally, nothing. But it works. Like it works so perfectly, and I think it's a way of being like, all right, I think we're getting a little saccharine here. It's too gentle or something. Let's end a little more raucous. And so to me, I hadn't really pondered it as such before, but between Malcolmus, I think, singing his ass off and really showing his range, the band also ends up playing very dynamically and really beautifully. Mm-hmm. And also grit, like, as I say, there's some grit towards the end. So in a weird way, and again, I hadn't thought of it, like this was a single, as I recall. Like there was a video for it and whatnot, and they're all dressed up in like country western garb and all these sorts of things. But no, it's a nice exemplification. Like this is a pretty good gateway into Pavement. If you were to listen to this song, like you never heard of this band, try this song. Just try it. It's got humor. It's enigmatic lyrically. The arrangement itself is beautiful but funny. I really think 18. This should be in the top 5. It's really wonderful.
Wow.
I might say. Yeah,
I would have it in my top 10.
Yeah,
I
I know
have it in
you.
my top 10.
Top 10, sure. I don't know what these ratings mean. I don't believe in ratings and
Right.
awards. But
It's water cooler talk.
No,
That's all it is.
I'm just saying, as I think about it more. First of all, anyone out there listening, once I dig into a topic, I get a little excitable. So you could make the argument like, what about these other 10 songs? And I'd be like, yeah, those are also great. But this to me, I think, as I say, it's got a nice balance of earnestness, irreverence, beautiful singing, wonderful playing. I just think all across the board, it's beautiful.
Yeah, well said. What when you think back to buying Wowie Zowie, you said you got it on the day it came out. That's, first of all, that's very cool. And second of all, I wonder, just to go on a tangent for a moment, I wonder if your penchant for B-sides helped you with that record, because it's almost constructed to me where there's like a song and then more of a B-side song, then a song, then more of a B-side song. Yeah. I'm thinking like Brink's Job and stuff like that. So that would have really helped. But what were you thinking the first time? And this is asking you to really stretch your brain. I apologize. But what were you thinking the first time you heard this song on this wicked roller coaster ride of a record?
You know what? I know this song gets, or rather the album Wowie Zowie gets compared a lot to the White Album.
Sure.
By the Beatles, who are from Liverpool and are no longer around. But they were, that album was, I think it's rightly regarded as this odd pastiche of sounds and ideas, and somehow it only coheres because contextually they made it cohere. Like, it doesn't really make a ton of sense as an album, but it's one of those albums where, like, I couldn't tell you what the best song on it is, because I almost view it conceptually as a whole.
Oh, wow.
So the sum of it, like, you can, there are singles from it and whatnot, but I have this is more about me, I suppose, JD, than maybe most people, but like, I'm an albums person. So when an artist or a band puts out an album, I assume, rightly or wrongly, in some cases it's not the case, but I assume it's a unified statement that they're making of a time and a place. Like Rolling Stones, certain bands, you'll be like, yeah, this album is actually like odds and sods from the previous couple of albums that they just reworked or whatever, or revisited. And they still count as albums, certainly the Stones in the 70s, you can make that argument. There's a few records where, like just what I'm describing, it's an album, but it's really like leftovers from some ideas they had. I would put Wowie Zowie in that White Album category of like, it's a whole thing. Like the way it's sequenced, the way songs blend together. As soon as you hear an artist do that, where the songs kind of there's barely any air between them.
Right.
That's a sequencing choice. That's a mastering choice. That's all sorts of choices they're making. But there's then tends to be this coherence between them. This isn't the case all across Wowie Zowie, but there are songs, as you know, where it's just, the next one just starts. You're just right into another song. So it becomes this sort of suite-like thing. All this to say, I might be stalling to answer your question because I haven't listened to the whole album in some time. This is going to prompt me to. I listened to this song on its own, and I will say it was a bit weird to hear it on its own, because I don't listen to Pavement. Sorry, as I've tried to just maybe exemplify, I generally don't listen to bands. I got a friend pointed out to me a few years ago. We were in a band together, and he said, "Yeah, you once said you don't like greatest hits compilations." I said that? He said, "Yeah, we were driving and we were listening to like AC/DC or something, and it came up in conversation, and you said you don't like greatest hits compilations because the context of the music is all out of order." And I said,
that
right.
makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I said, yeah, okay. I don't remember saying that. Sometimes I say things and I don't remember that I said them. And I said, oh yeah. Well, I mean, I said it and it stuck with him. Like he said, yeah, I've started to listen that way now, because you're right. Like the context of an album is so important to it. So when you asked me to be on the show and suggested, that we were going to talk about this particular song, I just listened to it on its own. Totally weird to hear it out of the album context. So I think going back to my sense memory, I don't know. I mean, it starts with We Dance, which is weird. And then you're right. Some of the songs seem, I mean, to some people, they would seem like half-finished ideas.
That's right.
Or just like little jabs of things, So you're absolutely right too. Like Serpentine Pad, Brink's Job, those sound like they could be B-sides, but I would argue that the Pavement B-sides are never really, they don't feel like throwaways to me. I
agree.
Sometimes they're a little looser and more fun, like things happen and that you wouldn't really hear. No, I don't even, you know what? I'm just going to retract that. I think they are all fully realized songs that stand on their own. But yeah, Wowie Zowie, I suppose, might have been the first sort of inkling that this band could do anything, and they weren't afraid to try anything. I'm sure some people were disappointed after Crooked Rain to hear this band to be a little more punk, but also, as we're talking about a song that, like I say, who knows? I don't know. I've not really thought about this in a long time, but I'm sure making the construction of Wowie Zowie and the sequencing was potentially a reaction to how much success and how they broke through with Crooked Rain.
Yeah, I can get behind that thought, because I mean, it's almost outlined in Cut Your Hair, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of the blueprint for Wowie Zowie in a way.
Yeah, like not deliberately self-sabotaging themselves, but being like, we're maybe a little too big. Let's do something a little less accessible. Like, let's do something a little more. I just want to be clear. I think it's brilliant. I don't find it confusing. But if you got into Cut Your Hair or Gold Sounds or got into that band that you saw freak out on the Tonight Show, then
listen to Pueblo.
Yeah. I think you're kind of like, you would just be like, as a band, I doubt it was even conscious, but maybe it was. Maybe we should do something that's a little more like wild. And if that was the case, I'm not sure it was. I'm sure there's literature, and I should have maybe revisited some of the liner notes and reissues and things to read about where their mindset was at. But even describing Father to a Sister of Thought, it has that mix of totally accessible. I could play this for my country music loving grandfather, but then it ends with like, hey, Grandpa, we're still kind of a punk band. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I going back to the theory of potentially sabotaging themselves, which I'm with you. I don't think they did it on purpose. I almost think it's like a sound and style change. You're right. Crooked Rain was so accessible, and it had a familiar sound. It had sort of a California classic rocks kind of vibe to it.
Crooked Rain is, I will interject only to say that I think Crooked Rain is also super weird.
It is.
It helped them break through, but it is a weird album. Like, it starts weird. It has like a full studio sound. Like it sounds like, I know that was made in a bit of a patchwork as well, but like it sounds more like a studio record.
Sure.
They went to a place that it wasn't going to be noisy and hissy and ambient. Even though it has elements of that, like it has a warmth to it, but it's a weird and wildly arranged album too. But this is even
coming off of Slanted though. It just seems more, readily available, I suppose, to a wider berth of people.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is it almost reminds me of what SM did when he went solo. That first record is so accessible and so poppy and so hooky and so earwormy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then he did Piglip after that, which I fucking adore, but it's so off the wall compared to the self-titled debut.
Yeah, and if we're viewing Malcolmus as, obviously the main driver of their songs, then yeah, it's his whims and it's his notions for a batch of songs. Like, I think Brighten the Corners is on some level it's the cleanest sounding Pavement album, but it's
Certainly.
also the most esoteric and the songs sprawl and they're all over the place as well, but it's also somehow more coherent and contained than Wowie Zowie. But the songs stretch out. That's their. What did we talk about with somebody recently? Maybe it was with the Pavement guys, Grateful Dead type stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like it has it's a little more zen. It's less frenetic, even though the imagery and whatnot is pretty intense and some of the arrangements are too. So yeah, I think it's just modes. Again, this goes back to my argument. I love albums. I love knowing that we're hearing where a band was at that given time. And that batch of songs, however, like Wowie Zowie, however disparate the songs might be from one another, that's what they were into. Like that's what was going on with them at the time, whether it had anything to do with external considerations or perceptions about who they were, how successful they wanted to be. Like that might just be all bullshit I'm making up. It could just be that's just what he had, what Malcolmus and what the band had going, and this is it. Why waste it? It's all over the place. Let's put it out as one thing. The next album, a little like I think it's fair to say, Brighten the Corners. Maybe it's not fair to say. I'll ask you. Brighten the Corners, probably safe to say a more coherent sounding album than Wowie Zowie.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a more albumy album.
Right.
In a sense.
But I also think Slanted and Enchanted all sounds like it's from the same expression too. The same.
Sure. I guess I mean albumy album. I just love the way it opens. There's a middle and then there's an end. There's a finite end with Finn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe, I don't know, like we mentioned Lollapalooza. There was something going on in the moment, in the cultural moment where it was really cool to be an open-ended music listener. It was really cool to be like, yes, we're playing with a folk musician. We're playing with Sinead O'Connor and Cypress Hill on the same day.
Bonkers.
And the Jesus Lizard. Like, on some level, that is a culture saying everyone is welcome.
Right.
Every sound has merit. We're sick of the orthodoxies. We're sick of there being camps. And so maybe Wowie Zowie reflects that too, on a musical level. It can be noise damaged. It can be a beautiful, if strange, folk song. It can be a country song. It can be a goddamn screamer where Malcolmus clearly loses his voice, on Half a Canyon or whatever. Like as we speak of it, I love that album. And like I say, though, I'm having trouble decontextualizing this song from the whole.
Right.
And that's more about me. But if we really dial into it, when I say this is a good exemplification of Pavement as a whole, maybe it's a good exemplification of Wowie Zowie as a whole. It has that beauty and thoughtful lyricism where you're like, what's he talking about? What's going on? This is really interesting imagery. Is he talking about Corpus Christi, Texas? Or is he talking about Corpus Christi, the kind of event? Like, I remember just thinking right away, why is he singing about Texas? Like, I have that sense memory, and I have this song and I'm just a man. Like, I have just little bits of lyrics that are just always with me that I just hum to myself. And yeah, this is one of those songs where I just have sort of mindlessly sung it out loud to myself as I'm sort of tooling around my life. I don't know if you have that where you just have these lyrical fragments, but this is definitely one of those songs. And I think, it exemplifies both the band and the album in a really fascinating way for me.
Cool. Well, is there anything you want to say more about Father to a Sister of Thought, or?
Well,
think?
I'm a lyrics guy, and we didn't have a chance to get too far into it. But I know that, I mean, it's on the surface, it seems to be about spirituality and people's relationships to that. But with Malcolmus, also, you never really know. On some level, I think he's spoken about this song and whatnot. But no, I don't know. All I'll say is I marvel at the guy. And I don't think he's one of these people I don't think we marvel at enough as a guitar player, as a musician, as a lyricist, and particularly on this song as a singer. And I hope this isn't, some people don't find this to be hyperbole, but, I think we take him for granted as a vocalist, and this is a great example of what he can do.
Agreed. Well, Vish, it's been dynamite to talk to you today. We went off on a few different directions, and I'm glad we got to do that. Is there, do you want to talk a little bit more about you and the podcast? And I want to say right off the bat that I said it earlier, Kreative Kontrol, it's with K's, Kreative Kontrol. So if you're searching for it on the Google, that's, you're going to want to spell it correctly.
Well, thank you.
Vish's style of correctly.
Well, I will immediately say that this is a reference to a Hot Snake song of the same name, Kreative Kontrol. So that's why I didn't make up the K's thing. And now there's like a fashion company called Kreative Kontrol, and I think someone like fashions themselves a rapper and they call themselves Kreative Kontrol, but they kind of show up and they don't show up. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, yeah, that's my show. I mean, on the internet, they'll be like tweeting rapidly, and then they just disappear. And then
weird.
I don't know what's going on. Anyway, yeah, nothing to do. I copped the name from a band I like, so I can't really complain. Complain spelled with a K, by the way. Yeah, I have this podcast, and as we're speaking, it's still going, and it's more important to me than ever because it is now my main job at the moment. Maybe by October it won't be, but yeah. So all I can say is if you support the work of people like me and JD, and want to support podcasters. Crowdfunding. I don't know about you, JD, and we don't have to talk too much shop, but the advertising revenue is very minimal, and it's
absolutely
honestly a little gross. No offense to your sponsors. I'd rather just
not have it.
Yeah, I'd rather not have it. But the crowdfunding and the Patreon that I have is particularly important to me at the moment. So I have different incentives and different tiers and all that kind of stuff, like pay tiers, and it's flexible and monthly and all that kind of stuff. So sorry to make this about the money. We've already talked about some of the content or whatever, like the people I talk to. Yeah, I'm proud of it. It seems to be relentless. It's never going to stop unless I do and stop making it. That sounded morbid. By the way, if I die, the show will likely die too. I just want to be clear about that. But no, I love doing the show. It's afforded me some wonderful experiences, and both in the conversations and then just from people like you, JD, reaching out, wanting to talk. I mean, it means a lot to me. So thank you for giving me some time to plug, and thank you for having me on this wonderful show of yours and for the lovely conversation. It means a lot.
Yeah, for me too. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, that's what we've got today. So be cool, make sure you're safe, and wash your goddamn hands. Thanks for listening to Meeting Malcolmus, a Pavement podcast, where we count down the top 50 Pavement tracks, as selected by you. If you've got questions or concerns, please shoot me an email, jd@meetingmalcolmus.com. Podcasts and such.